Right, where were we? What were we talking about?
Right.
I'll tee you up. I'll tee you up.
This will be seamless. Don't you
Okay,
worry.
wait for it.
Sorry, hang on. Is this the director's cut?
Very good. Very good.
Welcome to Nerds Chatting, movie, TV, comic chat. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome, everybody, to the Nerd Chatting podcast. My name is Nate, and with me, as ever, are my two very good friends, Ben and JB. How you doing, boys?
Hello, Nathan. How are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm all good, thanks.
Hello, JB.
Hi. You good? Yes.
Slick.
Okay.
Again, one day that will be good.
I
That,
think we
that
need
will
to
be good one day.
We need to
Never.
reset James. I think he's hung.
No. Hung?
Oh, yeah.
Ouch.
Welcome, everybody, as I said, to the Nerds Chatting podcast. We are the Nerds Chatting. We chat about all things nerdy, movies, TV shows, comic books, and everything in between. And there was a fairly large announcement last week that sent the internet ablaze about a certain director's cut. So we thought, let's talk about that a little bit and some directors / extended cuts of movies. How does that sound to you guys today?
Oh, this is great. I didn't even know we were talking about this. I hope I'm prepped.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
sounds good. Should we mention at the top here, Nathan, that we are talking about this a week late because I was too tired to do anything last week, and I said, "Let's bin it."
No,
I don't
that's
think
not
it was
fair.
No, it wasn't
No,
your
that's
fault
not-
at all.
It was mine. I was tired.
I think it was my fault. I was the one that said, "Do you want to bin it?" Because I'm too tired as well. I think we're all.
I just said I was too lazy and I hadn't done my revision.
Oh, that's right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So we're all agreed. We're all agreed. Then it's both of your fault. It's not my fault.
None of your
Excellent.
fault.
Good.
None of their fault.
So just for people who haven't followed thus far, Zack Snyder's the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League has been announced as an official thing. It's definitely happening. It's coming out on HBO MAX in 2021. For people who may not have seen this on the internet, there's a hashtag release the Snyder cut has been a big ongoing thing since
forever.
2017.
Whenever Justice League came out, so 20 something teen.
2017.
Yeah. So for like 3 years now, it's been release the Snyder cut. And
was it really 2017? My God, it was. Bloody hellfire. Why is those 3 years gone?
I know that, JV, you watched Justice League perhaps for the first time this week?
Yep.
So we'll get to that. We will get to that. Don't you worry.
I love getting to me. Cannot wait.
But just for context, again, I mean, people probably know this, but so the Justice League was a movie that follows straight on from the Batman vs Superman movie. It was already in production before Batman vs Superman came out. They Zack Snyder had made Man of Steel. They'd thrown that, it's very, very successful. They'd given him Batman vs Superman to do. They had expected it to make a lot of money. They'd already started in Justice League. They started filming it. Batman vs Superman comes out, and it has some critical
problems.
Problems,
issues.
absolutely.
Challenges.
There was all sorts of stuff around it about there's an extended cut that maybe should have been released. That almost immediately they announced there was an extended cut. Almost immediately. And then people were like, "Oh, well, why didn't you do that then?" And then we did get the ultimate cut, air quotes. And I, for one, was fairly against Batman vs Superman when it came out. Then I saw the ultimate cut, and I think it's one of my favorite films. I love it. I absolutely love it. Which is, I know, a bit of a turnaround. I know it's got issues, but it's a beautiful movie. Ben, what were you going to say?
I want to talk about something that will probably lead a lot of the things I want to talk about on this podcast about Batman vs Superman, because I feel that an awful lot of that film, that the problems that people have with that film are the fact that they've seen the theatrical cut of that film. And the theatrical cut is a 2.5-hour version of that film that has got key plot points cut out of it, which means that the film doesn't make sense as a whole film. When you watch the ultimate cut, the director's cut, the special edition, whatever you want to call it, and we're gonna say that every kind of permutation of that phrase we're going to say tonight. When you watch that film, that 3-hour version of that film, it's fantastic. Everything suddenly makes sense. The things that you're like scratching your head at going, oh my God, what the hell? Suddenly it all makes sense. Suddenly you see that there's some that the lead canisters, the canisters that have got like the gas kryptonite in it are made of lead, so therefore he can't see it. The Superman can't see it. The wheelchair is lead lined, so he can't see the bomb. There's so many different things.
And he's saving people after the bomb.
Exactly.
And Clark is actually an investigative reporter rather than just moping around in the background. And
there's about 20 minutes of Clark Kent put back into the film, and there's so much of it that you just ask yourself, why did that film need to have a director's cut? And the answer came about a year later, where it came down to the fact that executives wanted more money out of a shorter screen time because they could put the film on in the cinemas more during the day.
Yep.
So if it's a 3-hour film, they might only be able to show it 10 times a day, where if it's a 2.5 hour film, they might be able to show it 12 or 13 times a day, and therefore accrue more money. And there lies my problem. Audience were screwed by executive interference. And it's just, and this is where this entire podcast mushroom clouds for me, because every single thing that we're going to talk about pretty much here boils down to studio interference. Executives going, oh well, maybe if we did it this way, then maybe something else might be better, and we might get more money out of it.
JB, what are you going to say?
Go ahead.
I disagree with what Ben says. Sorry, not fundamentally.
Well,
but
fuck you.
No, I don't think it's necessarily just studio executives. I think it's censorship as well. So there is
that's true.
There's a version of Robocop that had been censored because it was too violent.
You're talking about all manner of director's cuts there. I'm talking about studio interference in superhero director's cuts. There's a difference. There's a divergence.
Well,
there's a divergence.
You weren't specific.
But that's fine. No, I wasn't.
But I think also what's really interesting about the Snyder cut for Justice League is that is it a director's cut? And the reason I say that is that Snyder obviously had to leave the film because of something horrible happening to his family. And then someone took over his. Is that right?
It is. That is the
story,
official story, and that certainly did happen, and it is horrific and tragic, and no one would ever wish that on anyone. But apparently, there's rumors that they were trying to push him out before that,
right?
Because of the poor reception on Batman vs Superman.
Okay.
And the poor reception of Batman vs Superman was because the theatrical cut was shredded.
But what we've got is so whatever it is, if a director's being pushed out and then having a new version of that film, it's kind of, is the director's cut the right terminology? Because for me, a director's cut is someone who has directed all of a film. It has been released, and coming back onto Ben's point, things have been cut out. So Batman versus Superman, the Ultimate Edition, whatever you want to call it, is that exactly? They wanted to shorten the film. I've not seen the theatrical version. I've only seen the Ultimate Cut, and I do actually think it's quite good. I know I slag DC movies off versus Marvel films. I mean, it's good for DC. Yeah.
Listen, and I know we're here to talk about the Justice League, Zack Snyder cut and all that sort of thing, but we can't talk about that without talking about this. So let me just focus on this point a little bit longer. JB, if you watch the theatrical cut of Batman vs Superman, you will not believe you're watching the same film as the Ultimate Cut. You will ask yourself, what the hell is this? Why is all of this stuff missing from this film? Why was it cut out? Because it makes the film not make no sense, because the film still has very good action scenes in it, and and it's gritty and it's realistic, and it's still got good bits to it, but there are plot points that you just go, well, that was a bit of a jump. Why did that happen? Why did it go from there to there? And there's this whole bit that sort of chops between those three scenes. There's that middle scene that's just gone, wiped out, cut, gone. You watch the theatrical cut of that film, you will not believe it. You won't believe how they could release something like that into the cinema, and then you won't believe. Oh, sorry, you will believe why people had so many problems with it, and why people focus so much on Batman killing, where he doesn't normally kill, but he does in the movies. He always kills in the movies, Nathan. You've talked about this before, but people got so fixated with it because they were because they were missing key parts of the film that we got then ultimately with the ultimate cut of the version of the movie. So there you go. That's just
So they're
I'm
saying,
boiling.
yeah, they're saying that this Justice League Zack Snyder cut is likely. We don't know what format it's going to come in, but it's likely to be episodic. So it
See,
might
that's
not.
interesting, isn't it?
Might not
I
be a
quite like
movie.
that.
It might be like 4 episodes or something.
Like a mini
Because
series or something like that.
because he theoretically shot enough. So it was supposed to be 2 movies. So theoretically, he shot enough for say 1.5 movies, because he would have done some stuff for the next movie that comes out. And there's some argument that maybe Superman wouldn't have arrived until right at the end of Justice League, so that he could come in and be sort of save the day, or have that struggle in the second film. So there's a possibility that this is going to be really a brand new thing, and a brand new thing in terms of concept, but a brand new thing in terms of product as well. So concept, it's not just a movie. We're probably going to have to sit down and watch this over a month, 2 months maybe, and also it will have new scenes to us. It will have new characters to us. It will have new lines, new dialogue. It might have, it'll have some new effects. It will have stuff cut out of it that we are used to in the theatrical cut. So it's a really interesting time. It's a really, I can't wait to see it. I really can't. James.
Yeah, I mean, I just coming back. It's for me. It's not a director's cut. It's a remake. It's a
Yes.
remake of something else. It's like someone going back and going, "There's Return of the Jedi. I'm going to remake it in my view, from my point of view." And that's so I'm maybe I'm getting hung up on the director's cut, but Snyder wasn't the director. He was the director, did all the things he wanted, then he had to leave, and then Whedon came in and then directed the film. I guess in terms of writing and everything else, that didn't change.
No, apparently it did. So the
whole
story was
story.
changed.
So it's a different
well,
story.
not the whole story. I mean, I think it's probably got a similar thread. It's going to be them having to come together to defeat Steppenwolf, and then go on to defeat Darkseid, which wasn't really in the theatrical cut. And there'll be an element of having to bring Superman back, and Superman will likely be more not evil, but like more unchained for longer, because there was supposedly he's supposed to be black suit Superman, which is a thing from the comics where he comes out and he's all in like a black Superman suit, and he's got long hair, and he's sort of
give me the
rough around
mullet.
the edges, and he's probably going to have a beard and things like that. These are little things, but they're things that make a big difference to that arc of the character, because he comes out in the theatrical cut, he comes out and within half a minute he's fine. I mean, I actually really love that scene where he fights off the Justice League, because for me it's Superman just being Superman. He's just like top of his game.
So that is I'm not just trying to blow smoke up your bum, but that is also my favorite. The favorite element for me on that scene is when the Flash starts running around him, and the Flash is like, I got this, and all of a sudden you just see Superman and his eyes just move, and it's following him, and the Flash is like, what's going on here? I just was like, I mean, actually, I don't know whether it was. I mean, there was some comedy value in that as well, but also some serious like, I didn't know this could happen.
And this is the thing. I don't know, that feels like, because there are parts of the Justice League movie that we have had Whedon's version of Snyder's whatever of that film. There are parts of that film that you can tell are reshoots handled by Whedon, because Cavill's mustache is CGI'd off of his face and it looks really weird. But that bit feels like it's possibly straight out of the Snyder version.
Yeah.
Because the mustache doesn't look like it's been CGI'd off at that point. It looks like his actual face.
There are some clues in the trailers. So the scenes of that in the trailers, we never saw Superman in the trailers because that was kind of like a secret reveal. But we did see bits of that, like we saw Flash running around, and we saw Batman come on there, and we saw the Justice League stand up on the steps. And in all of those scenes, it's nighttime, and you can tell it's nighttime because all of the buildings have their lights on. And in the movie, they've made it daytime, and one of the major shifts, one of the major changes that Joss Whedon has made is to make the movie less, air quotes, dark and gritty. And by doing, and so, one of the most obvious things to do there is set a lot of it during the day rather than at night because it makes it brighter and you can color it brighter. Unfortunately, all the buildings' lights are still on, so they've made the sky like daylight, but all the building lights are on, so you can tell that it's not quite right. Something about the movie isn't. No, that's fine. That's fine to not notice it, and because you're in the moment. It's a good action scene. Sorry, but when you look back, you can go, that's a change.
I'm going to watch it again.
This is a good point to come in, JB, and ask you what you thought of it, because I know you said in the past, for context for people, you said in the past that DC movies are nowhere near as good as Marvel movies, and you've given them a bit of a hard time. But I know that you did actually enjoy watching Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman.
Absolutely, of course I did.
Yeah. Because I think they are really entertaining movies. That, like you say, though, they're just not Marvel. They're a different beast. So, what did you make of Justice League?
I felt, and you've highlighted on the point. It felt like it. I always feel that DC characters, especially if Batman's involved, there's always a dark side. There should be some sort of. It's not all light and fluffy like an Ant-Man or a Wasp or something like this. It's Batman is a really complex character, and him having to find it in himself to be and build a team because he knows that something's bad's coming and he can't deal with it himself and he's such a loner. I think there could have been more struggle in that. It just seems to be like, oh, I need some help. Wonder Woman, can you give me a hand, please? Because I've got to get this dude who's like a robot and another bloke who runs really fast. And by the way, I'm really guilty that I think I killed Superman. Can we bring him back alive, please? It just doesn't feel. I don't know. It just doesn't feel as gritty as I would expect from a DC film. I did enjoy it, but it was very light-hearted.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Absolutely, I do.
Like when the Flash gets into the car with Bruce and he goes, I can't remember the line, but something goes, well, what's your superpower? I'm rich. Yeah, I don't know if Batman normally says that type of stuff. That's not something. I think Batman would reply like, I'm going to smash you in the face. Don't question me.
Well, JB, that is as a direct result of the executives at Warner Brothers panicking at the fan reaction to BVS and going, oh, well, we've made it too dark. We've made it too gritty. We need to lighten it up. Who made a really good sort of superhero film handling lots of superheroes? Joss Whedon did with Avengers. Let's bring Joss Whedon in to make this a fluffier film. And that's what they did. They took what they had with what footage they had. They recrafted the story. They fixed the bits they couldn't do with pickups. I mean, you can tell there's a massive difference between Ben Affleck and like from scene to scene or even from shot to shot within the same scene where like he's wearing a wig and he looks puffier in some scenes because it's probably like 12 months later. That's because it's reshoots. There are problems with the film, and it's not the film or anywhere near the film that we should have got after BVS. That leads to the fans for the last 3 years, I guess. Absolutely. Anytime anyone to do with Warner Brothers tweets or posts anything, every single time, guaranteed, look at the comments on that tweet or the replies to that tweet. It's always release a Snyder Cut. It's all they've had for 3 years.
Well, let's just hope it's going to be good. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
thing.
because
I mean,
it could be awful.
it could be awful.
And this is
I mean,
what I said last time. Yeah,
I mean,
it might not be good.
apart from the Batman elements, I enjoyed the introduction of the Flash. I liked him. Cyborg was quite interesting, and then you've got Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot. I mean, she's awesome. I don't mean that because she's very pretty. I just think she's brilliant. I
Yeah,
love
she's
it.
great. I
The
agree,
only
yeah.
problem I have with it is at times I just felt like I don't know that I was oogling her because the camera was on her
Yeah,
at certain angles,
absolutely. That's
and I
a
just
Joss
was like,
Whedon thing. Yeah, yeah.
and actually, like, she's an Amazonian woman who is extremely powerful. All right, she is very beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but she's a warrior and she's tough and.
Suddenly, the cameras linger on her butt for 10
Yeah,
seconds.
I mean,
What's all that? Yeah.
I enjoyed the battle fight with her and Superman. The headbutt and just that. I thought that was quite good. And she's trying to knock some sense into him, literally. But yeah, I don't know. It wasn't the same as the first Wonder Woman film.
I thought the scene where Steppenwolf comes and steals the mother box from the Amazonians is actually a really good action scene because you get to see the Amazonians being properly badass.
Oh my god, weren't they just?
But I totally agree that Wonder Woman doesn't get much to do much in this, and a lot of it is her standing around and they do, like you say, point the camera at her bum, and we can make all the jokes we like. She's got a beautiful figure. She's a lovely lady. She's a beautiful woman. But it's the character that we love. The reason we loved Wonder Woman as a character in the Wonder Woman movie is because her character was so strong and she plays it so well, and she's just so interesting as a character.
Yep.
I think there was a really interesting tweet. It was last week sometime, and it was quite blatant, but it was side by side shot of when men direct and when women direct, and it was the Amazonians from Justice League and the Amazonians from the Wonder Woman film. And in Wonder Woman they're in armor, right? They're in armor and they're like covered and they're soldiers. And in the Justice League shots they're in like bikini armor.
Yes.
And you kind of just go, oh, that's really shit. It's just shit. There's no other way of saying it. That's just the worst.
Yeah.
So with any luck, the we'll see some changes in that in the Snyder Cut, hopefully.
Yeah.
And I know, like I say, that tweet was it was too much, but it was
and I don't think we had that in when Wonder Woman rocks up in BVS. I don't feel that there was that same sort of I don't know how to camera angle or whatever. It was just
over
like
sexualization type.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting it.
I think you're right. I think they make a point of the fact that she's beautiful, but that's kind of
secondary.
Yes, and that's important to the fact that she almost seduces Bruce, but it's not about sex. It's about the fact that she's a stunning lady and she's wearing this beautiful ball gown and that sort of thing. It's not necessarily it's a different side to it. It's sort of power because she's beautiful and strong and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so with Justice League, you enjoyed it though.
Yeah, it was good. But it was too lighthearted for me. I wanted to see more. I also felt like, oh yeah, Superman's back. Boom, Steppenwolf's dead. See ya. I was like, that. What? I mean, I'd like to know a little bit more about this dude. And it just seemed too. He rocks up first time you see him, and he is. I mean, like you say, the battle scene with the Amazonian women. I mean, he is just like all powerful. Boom, let's go on. Then they battle with the Justice League, and then Superman just rocks up. If he knows anything about Krypton, because he goes, "Oh, Kryptonian," he'll know that he's got a weakness. Get that kryptonite out, bruv. Smash, just weak him up. Just, oh yeah, Superman's here. He's battling away. He can go off and save some people with the Flash. He can come back. He's got his icy breath. He's going to smash his axe. In comes Wonder Woman. See ya. Oh my God, really? I mean, really?
I think this is an example of where Zack Snyder's Justice League will have more opportunity to give us character growth and character development, because like you
Yes.
say, it was just, oh, Superman's here, save the day, done.
It's my top trump card. Here he
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Okay, boys, we can sit down now. MVP's here. He's just rocked
Yeah.
up. So like that. Oh, I could do with the rest. Anyone want a brew? Superman would be done in about 3.5 minutes.
Yeah, and that's and actually interesting. That's one of people who've never read Superman comics. That's one of the criticisms of the character, is that he's all powerful, and it's sort of he's a uninteresting character because you can't write peril for him. But actually, that's not true at all. There's a lot of things you can do with him. But so this is a whole lot to talk about, and there's a lot of speculation for it. But what we can do is we can talk about some movies that have changed already in our lifetime, that we know good changes and bad changes of. We've got a few listed here, and I've got some that I really love. One that I think is totally pointless. I don't know if you guys have got a few in your mind you want to talk about, but maybe I'll just throw one in there and start the conversation off. How does that sound?
That sounds.
We're talking director's cuts now, yeah?
Yeah. Extended cuts, director's cuts, so whatever you want to call them.
Go for it.
We've talked a bit about Batman vs Superman Ultimate Cut. I don't know if we necessarily need to talk about that too much, but one of the ones that for me is just, it's a perfect example of when this works well, is the Lord of the Rings extended cuts. I loved theatrical cuts of Lord of the Rings. They were moments in my life. They came out around about my birthday for 3 years running. It was sort of 18, 19, 20 of my age. They are almost perfect recreations of the novels, which are brilliant as well. I really love them. And then you get the announcement that the extended cuts are coming out. Now, they were pre-ordered the day that they were announced for me. I had box sets. I had all the extra figurines that came with them and everything. And then you look at the actual stuff that's in there. You've got so much more character depth with Sam, Frodo, Faramir, Gandalf, Boromir, Aragorn, Legolas, the elves. There's just so much more.
You've also got the death scene for a major character in the trilogy in the director's cut of the third movie that's not in the theatrical cut, because they're like, we'll just get rid of it.
It's 50 minutes extra in Return of the King. 50. It's nearly an hour extra content. Mm-hmm. They are Peter Jackson's love letter to cinema. Not even to us as an audience member. They are him saying, you know what? I've been given green light to make 3 movies. Fuck it. I'm going to make 4 movies. And he clearly was like, I want all of this. And he was part of the writing team with his wife and Lady Fran Walsh, maybe, for adapting.
Right, yeah.
So clearly they've got deep, we know from having him done The Hobbit and all sorts of stuff, he's got a very deep love for Lord of the Rings as a story, as a world. And he's just gone in there and he's just said, right, well, we've written this adaptation. It's too long for what we want to do. So let's just film it all. And then once we've filmed it all, we'll cut it down, and the extra stuff we'll just put out later. And I got to say that I think the extended cuts are fantastic. And I remember when they came out, and I remember when the last one came out, I did a whole weekend watching them back to back, and that's quite an ordeal, but it's also a really great experience. I don't know if you guys have ever done that with it.
Well, actually, Nathan, I have bested you on your whole weekend ordeal. Where I used to work, I used to do 12-hour night shifts. It was a long time ago, and on Christmas night, where I worked on this night shift, it was obviously very, very quiet. I watched all 3 director's cuts of those movies in a 12-hour night shift. Don't get me wrong, we started at about 7:30. I was supposed to start at 8 and finish at 8. We started at about 7:30 watching the film, and I finished at probably about 8:15, with a couple of little breaks here and there. That was an ordeal, my friend. That was an ordeal. Yeah. But that is out of everything that we're going to talk about here, that is a director's cut released for the sake of releasing a director's cut with extra footage to give something to the fans that I am 100% on board with. And they're probably the versions of the films that I prefer over the theatrical cuts.
Yes. And I know that if I think to myself, oh, I really want to watch Lord of the Rings, I really have a real internal struggle with, but I want to watch the extended cut, but it's really long. I don't know if I've got time, but I want to watch the extended cut.
Have I got 4 hours to watch this one movie?
So you know what I mean? Like it's never a question of, oh, I'll just watch the theatrical. It's always I need to make time for the extended cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you James? Have you seen them all? The extended cuts?
Yeah. I've done it, and I think it without the director's cut, they're awesome films,
Yes.
and the director's cut just adds more to it. I mean, if it's just an epic adventure that I guess what Ben said at the start of the pod is that if you release that in the cinema, you're gonna have to have a break in between.
Yeah.
But when you're at home, you can easily just pause it. You can make yourself a brew. You can do whatever. But yeah, I mean, there is. Is the director's cut needed? Probably not, but it adds a lot more depth as well. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you can get away with it. You don't walk away from the film with questions, because questions like you do maybe with, I don't know, like Blade Runner, for example, and they added more things into that, but we can get onto that maybe. But it's quite complete, but it adds to the completeness. It's like a nice little strawberry topping along the top. Oh, it's lovely.
Very nice. We were just saying about having a break. We did a date night with Delilah podcast last week, where we watched the film The Ten Commandments from 1956. The Charlton Heston. It's 3 hours and 40 minutes long, and what's really funny, James, is that you just said is that it's over 2 DVDs, and at the end of the first DVD it says intermission. They literally, in the cinema in 1956, paused the movie, let you go out for a toilet break and buy some ice cream, and then come back in. Like, that was just what they would do. And they've talked about that sort of thing in like Avengers Endgame, but that didn't happen. But it wouldn't surprise me if we get to that point, because movies are getting longer again. You know,
and actually, you know, it's like with anything. If I'm sitting down in the movie about to watch a film, it doesn't matter. I don't want to drink too much. I don't want to eat too much, just in case. Because once the film starts and you're in a cinema and you go out, you never know when is a good time for me to go and take a wee. You know, if I go out in Avengers Endgame near the start, and then you see the beheading of Thanos or whatever, and then I come back, I'll be like, who am I going to ask to say if I've missed anything? Because I know Ben. He looks at me at the start of a movie, and it's almost like, you touch me, I'll break your face.
What are you going to say, Ben?
There's a perfect time to go to for one final pee break before a film starts is when they are showing the adverts before the trailers, before the movie starts. That's the perfect time to go. If you want to be really dicey, you could watch one trailer after those adverts. You could watch one trailer and then go, but then you risk the start of the film.
But for 3.5 hours, bro, if I was watching a 3.5 hour film, there's no way I think I could prepare myself for it. I'd just be dry. I just wouldn't. And the thing is then you lose your enjoyment, because you're like, I think I need a wee.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you're like,
I agree. Yeah.
Oh no, I'm not comfortable, or something's not right. And you know, we've had this discussion, haven't we, about sitting in your own home. You don't get the cinematic experience, but you get all the little. Oh, I think I might go and get myself another trio or a hobnob.
I want to focus on a point that you were making just a moment ago, JB, when you talked about Blade Runner and how many cuts of that film there have been.
Oh my goodness, how many is there? 18? No, I don't know.
I think there are 8.
Yeah,
I think there might be 8, but I might be wrong, and someone's probably screaming at me right now. Now, I don't know why there are 8 cuts of that film. I suspect it's possibly because when Blade Runner was released, and I know it's a cult classic and everyone loves it and yada yada yada, but it didn't make very good. It didn't do well at the box office.
It's not very good. The original cut isn't very good. I've seen it. It's bad.
So it was directed by Ridley Scott, and Ridley Scott is notorious for releasing director's cuts or final cuts or ultimate cuts or whatever you want to call it of his movies. He's done it with Kingdom of Heaven. He's done it with Blade Runner 8 times, for Christ's sake. He's done it with Alien. He's done it with this. He's done it with that. He will always release a director's cut. Now, I don't know if he does it because he doesn't get final cut on his movies enough, and therefore the studios pressurize him to trim bits of the film off and do this and do that. So he has to go back and think, well, do you know what? I'll finish it how I want to do it. And I'll sell more DVDs and the studio will make more money and I'll make more money and maybe the movie will make its money back and then some. But he is a guy who I always think, why do you have to do it? And then at the same time, I've seen the theatrical cut of Kingdom of Heaven and it stank. And apparently the director's cut of the film, which is like 3.5 hours long, is bloody great. But I've not seen it.
I think that's the point. I think he actually does make great movies, and I think that he gets interfered with. Certainly with Blade Runner, it's true that the voiceover. So there is the theatrical cut of Blade Runner. There's a voiceover, and it's a lot like a hard-boiled type, Humphrey Bogart type. What would you call that?
Like a noir thriller or something.
Yeah, like a noir thriller. Yeah. So he goes up to the bar. He's like, I went up to the bar and I ate noodles. They were bitter. When she came into my office, I knew she was trouble. That sort of thing, right? Like, so it's background voiceover. Okay. In the final cut, there's none of that, and we're just allowed to watch the scenes play out. We're allowed to see how it goes, and you get emotion from the acting. Guess what? You get to figure it out as a human being by watching how they react to one another. And it's
Show
great.
Don't tell.
Yeah, so the theatrical cut was put in. Apparently, that was put in because the test audiences didn't know what was going on.
Yeah,
they couldn't understand it. But that may be a sign of the times. That may be that Ridley Scott was trying to make a movie that we weren't ready for as audiences, and only 15 years later, when we've had a lot of fast-paced and some hits and some misses movies. Movies have a different language now to when they were first come out, which is what I think people mean when they say, "Oh, old movies are a bit slow." They have a different language. They're written in a different way, and I don't mean like English language. I'm saying like the pacing and the editing and the set design and the way it's literally framed and shot and the camera movements and stuff. It's a different language now, and I think maybe Ridley Scott was ahead of his time, was doing something that people weren't ready for, and then people said the audience reactions were like, we've got to have it explained to us. So then they had to put that explanation in. JB's got something to say.
Do you want to go first, Ben? Go on, you can go.
All I want to say very, very quickly on Blade Runner is the fact that there are 8 versions of Blade Runner interfered with and damaged what is one of the best films that has ever been made, which is the sequel, Blade Runner 2049. Because everyone said, well, yes, it's a sequel, but what is it a sequel to? Which version? Is it the original cut, the theatrical cut, the editor's cut, the final cut, the final editor's cut? Which one? And the simple fact that film came out was as amazing as it was, and it was one of the best films I've ever seen, but it bombed at the box office. It bombed because no one really knew what it was a sequel to, because there's so many different versions of Blade Runner that only the hardcore fans went to go and see it. And it's such a shame because it was a masterpiece. And how many Denis Villeneuve director's cuts are there of his films? Well, not very many. Not very many. None. Sorry, JB, I jumped over your point, mate. What were you trying to say?
I think it's a really interesting point, isn't it? So was the Blade Runner reshoots because people didn't necessarily, because in some films you don't want all of the story. You want to be able to put some pieces together, and you want to be able to join the dots, and you
show don't tell.
Yeah. But in some other films, it's kind of like, is it not? If the majority of the people say I'm not sure, then people will get on board of that view, and maybe that's the reason why they didn't like that film or something else, But then if you have some of your questions answered, then it's kind of that makes a lot more sense. Coming back to, like, you've commented on Batman versus Superman, there were so many plot holes that the film didn't make sense. When you fill those holes in, it's like, oh wow, now I get it. Now I've completely got it. So it kind of might actually, Nate, link into what you were saying, is that the story was so ahead of its time that people their brains couldn't actually deal with androids or anything around that, and just trying to digest it and go, what? I mean, really? Is that true?
Because actually, I think what the film, without harping on Blade Runner too long, but I think what Blade Runner actually does really well is asks questions rather than answers questions. That is almost the essence of the movie, and I think the second movie does that as well. And you're right, James. Maybe that's the problem in itself, is that it's asking questions without giving you answers, allowing you, when the film ends, to just make your own decisions up on that. You come away with whatever you wanted to come away with. But a general audience who want to go and see a sci-fi movie, a few years after Star Wars, wants to see 1 year after Star Wars.
Star Wars. That's where I want to stop. That's where I need to jump in here.
Go on.
I wasn't old enough to see the first 2 Star Wars films in the cinema.
Lies, you're ancient.
Thank you.
Yes.
I did see Return of the Jedi in the cinema in 1983, but in 1977, I wasn't actually born at that point, and in 1980, I was only 2 years old. So, when in 1997, George Lucas, for the 20th anniversary, re-released Star Wars: A New Hope and Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back and Star Wars: Return of the Jedi in the theaters with new footage or added I don't know, graphics or whatever you want to call it, I went nuts. I went to see it.
Do you remember the trailer? The trailer for the 97 release. I remember this because I remember going to, this was like prime time cinema for me. It was exactly for you. The marketing was genius, because it's a massive black screen, a cinema screen, and then in the middle of the screen, teeny tiny, is a little CRT TV. Yeah. And the voiceover says, if you've only seen Star Wars on television, then you haven't seen Star Wars. That's and then an X-wing flies out of the TV and at you through the screen, through the on the big screen.
That's
and
right.
Yeah, I remember, like you, Ben, just going like, yes,
holy
yes,
shit.
now.
Yeah. So I went to see those films, whatever you call them, director's cuts, special editions. They're called special editions, but whatever you want to call it. They fall under this banner as far as I'm concerned. I absolutely had the best time ever.
I agree.
Now, with the benefit of hindsight, looking back now,
it's crap.
No, I love them still. No, I love them still.
Crap. They're not crap. They're not crap. I will not have that. I think there's some of the stuff added to The Empire Strikes Back, where you see more of Cloud City, where some of the walls are taken away, and you see more of Bespin. Fantastic. I don't love Jabba the Hutt in A New Hope, but that's not great.
But you've got to be clear about what you're talking about here, because not only were there the 97 special editions, there was also the DVD release special editions and the Blu-ray special editions, and every single one of them had a different version. There were new scenes, new special effects. Yeah, absolutely, Disney Plus. There were the Jabba the Hutt. They've redone Jabba twice.
Yeah, well, they had to, because the first time in 97 it was bad.
Yeah. It was
real bad. Anyway, it was the first time I'd seen those movies on the big screen, and they were life. And now, 23 years later, I'm thinking to myself, do you know what? I just want to see the original Star Wars film on the big screen. That's what I want.
I will. I know. I think we're going to disagree with Nate. I don't think the premise of the special editions, in my view, was Lucas couldn't make the film he wanted because of his vision, and technology wasn't there and wasn't able to do it. But hitting on the point that Ben said, I mean, some of it may be great. I can't remember specifics, but I'm sure there's, like you said, X-wing fighters, and isn't it different scenes when they're coming into the Death Star and they're all lined up, and then they open their wings. That's awesome. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I think all the dogfight sort of scenes were redone.
That fits beautifully, but the thing that just resonates in my mind is the Jabba the Hutt scene where Han Solo steps on his tail over him, and it's kind of just a little bit weird, and it just doesn't feel right. So
That's because originally he was a human and Han Solo walked around the back of him, and because obviously he had a tail, he had to sort of walk up over the tail and back down.
I don't see that. It just didn't look right. There are elements which are good. There are other things which I just think that didn't add to the story one iota.
I completely agree with you that Jabba doesn't look great. However, there are other bits like when they first land on Tatooine and there's the dewbacks and those creatures, that all looks better. Mos Eisley, I know there are some questionable bits of CGI in that, but I think it's the time that it came out. I think now that they've been done the fourth or fifth time or whatever, I think it looks really cool. I really like it. I think that actually, James, your point about that it was because he didn't have the technology to do it and now he has.
Yeah.
I think it makes it better. The
Yeah.
lightsabers don't look great in the original cut. They look a bit wobbly. Now you can CGI over them.
Doesn't that add to the type of the film that was trying to be made at that time? I don't get me wrong. I mean, this is then classic, where I would say you would have a remake, which is I think where we came in with the Justice League, and in some terms, isn't it? Wasn't Superman 2? There's a problem with directors there.
Yeah. We'll get to that in a moment. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay,
definitely.
but if someone says I'm going to take Star Wars: A New Hope and I'm going to replay that out in some way, and you've still got certain parts of the movie or that story, but it's now different, then I think the special effects will just blow you away. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I guess for me, your argument at the beginning of that was that it's the original, and that's it adds to it, that sort of quirkiness adds to it a little bit. But I think perhaps that all the stuff that's come since then has tailored my opinion of it, and I like that it's gone back and become cleaner.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And maybe if the original trilogy was all there was and it was touched up, I maybe would be like, oh, don't do that, because like it was.
Yeah.
But because 1, 2, and 3, and then 7, 8, 9, and the TV series and the cartoons and maybe at that point I'm like, well, I want it to fit in the same look and feel. Maybe I don't know.
It's interesting though, because this is a special edition, so it's technology changing a film rather than things being taken out and then being re-added.
Yeah, it is different. Yeah. It's a different kettle of fish to the Justice League movie, and to the Batman vs Superman things. I've got one I want to throw in quickly before we do get to the Superman 2 cut, because I think we do need to talk about that. But the other month, I was in HMV. So it was some months ago, because it was before lockdown, and I was buying something, can't remember what it was, and on the counter was like one of those, you can get this for $1.99 because you spent over £15 or whatever, and it was the Wrath of Khan, Star Trek 2, the Wrath of Khan director's cut, and I looked at it and I was like, there's a director's cut for the Wrath of Khan. How did I not know there was a director's cut for the Wrath of Khan? It's like one of my most favorite movies, and I was like, well, I don't normally, you see those things and you're like, I do not need that, I do not need to spend the extra money on it, it's there for just to catch me when I got my wallet out. But I was like, no, I'm having this film. It was almost like the thing I should have bought over whatever it was I end up buying. But I gotta mention it because there's only one extra scene in it.
Okay.
There's one extra scene. It's not very long, and it's where you learn that the boy that dies in the engine room is Scotty's nephew.
Oh, the one he's carrying out.
Yeah.
Excuse me, who's covered in like burns and all that sort of thing. The only one who didn't leave his post. That's
the only thing. You just get more character development for Scotty, because you like. I understand when you first watch it, you're like, why did Scotty carry this kid to the bridge? Because he carries the kid to the bridge. And you're like,
he was the only one who didn't leave his post.
Yeah, I know. But also now I know it's because it was his sister's son. But it's literally like
it's 244. It says here there's 200. I've just looked it up. 244 seconds of extra.
Oh, there you go.
So do you know what I mean?
But those bits must have been like cut like throughout the movie, because that the only thing I noticed, and I know that film well, the only thing I noticed was that scene in the engineering, and I was like,
That's
okay,
crazy.
cool. That's like you watch it for like half an hour, you're like, okay, that's the first new bit, right? Cool. Keep watching, keep watching, and then you get to the end of the movie, you're like, yeah.
So
No.
it must have been like scenes were shortened here and there and things like that, Nathan.
Yeah, exactly.
Scenes
Yeah,
that you're familiar with were a little bit longer, and you didn't realize that because you just watched the
exactly.
same scene that you've seen 1,000 times before. Yeah.
I've just got one quickly, and I have mentioned it already, which is one of my favorite films, which is Robocop. And
Yes.
and now this was, as I said at the start of the pod, this was basically, there's a director's cut because it was too bloody gory. And people, the censors were like, we can't release this, we can't do this, we can't do that. And it's mostly around when Murphy gets basically shot to shit. And it is horrific. And I only realized there was a director's cut when I watched the film. It was on TV, and I was like, I don't remember his arm getting blown off like that. And I was
I think there are 3 scenes. I think there are 3 scenes, 2 of which are in the bit where Murphy gets shotgun to death. And one of those scenes is it's after Clarence has blown his hand off.
Yeah.
Because his hand gets blown off. He sort of stands up and he's holding the bloody stump of his wrist. And the first shotgun hits him in the arm and blows the rest of his arm off, basically.
Yes, it does.
And it's rough to watch because the guy is then screaming for his life as he's being shotgunned to death. And then Clarence comes back into it. And Murphy's still on the floor and he gets shot in the head. However, what happens is the camera sort of pans up and it's a full or 2/3 animatronic of Peter Weller of Murphy, sort of grimacing in pain, and it looks really good. It looks lifelike. I mean, it's incredible work, like puppetry work, whatever it is. It's incredibly well done. So the camera sort of pans up at him, and then sort of pans around to watch Clarence hold the gun, blow his head off, and the head fully explodes, and it's gruesome. It is proper gruesome. So that's 2 cuts. The third cut is when that poor executive who works for OCP, who points the gun at Ed 209, and then when Ed 209 comes to life and says, "You got to drop it," he throws it down. Ed 209 doesn't hear it, and he gets machine gunned to death. There's a bit where he falls onto the model of Delta City, and there's it's probably only what, JB, a 2-second cut where he's continuously getting shot, machine gunned to death by a 209 whilst he's lying on the city, and there's blood coming everywhere, and it looks unbelievably gruesome. That's it. That is the unedited cut of Robocop. They had to cut it because in the 80s, the UK censors were so, probably US as well, but the UK censors were so extreme and hardcore. They were like, "Nah, you can't show all that. That's excessive. You got to cut some of that." So he made 3 cuts. Film got released.
Yeah. There are a few other seconds in there or whatever. I mean, it's definitely still, when the guy gets shot to shit by Ed 209, it still has one of my favorite lines in there where you just hear someone go, "Somebody get a goddamn paramedic!"
Yes.
Right, man.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but that's an interesting one, because actually the gruesomeness, I don't think you need it. I don't need to see Murphy's arm get blown off, or because it's the death of it is just awful anyway. But I don't think it necessarily adds to that movie. But there we go.
I actually think it makes the film quite unsettling, if I'm honest with you.
It's an unsettling film in the first place. I mean,
but even more so. I think the brutality of it is horrendous. Nathan, you got a point to make.
2 things actually. I think one of the reasons why Robocop is so good is that it's not just 80s schlock nonsense. It is actually deals with what would it be like to be a man who turns into a robot, and actually that's quite hard. And the fact that he keeps going back to his house and he has memories of his wife, that's what makes Robocop an interesting movie, because it is unsettling. I fully agree with you. I think a lot of people remember it for the action scenes and the silly one-liners, but actually it is good because of the other stuff, the character stuff. The point I was going to ask, though, having said that, I think we all three of us agree Robocop's an absolutely excellent movie. Have you seen and what do you think of the remake?
Awful.
I've not seen it. I've not seen it, and I don't think I'm ever going to bother with it
Don't
because I think I've heard enough people go, "Wow, that sucked." So I'm just not gonna. I'm not that fussed, really. Not fussed about it.
It's been I guess this is classic, isn't it? It's remade the film, but it's in some ways it's showing. I think the original film shows America in some ways, and the crime and everything, and what a robot might be like. It. I can't explain myself, but I just don't think it's the same. I
I
don't think
think it. I think
the
that from what
comic
I've heard,
there's
the remake
slapstick.
misses the
Sorry.
satire of
Yes.
what the first film was all about. Well, not all about, but had an awful lot. It was a satire on what America was going to become in the future. And I
Consumerism.
think from what I understand, the remake massively missed that point. It was like, hey, it'd be cool to make him a bit CGI here and there and make him do fun flips and stuff like that. Meh.
Yeah.
I quite enjoy it as a standalone movie. I think if you didn't call it Robocop, I think it'd be quite a fun movie. It is, however, not good.
No.
Do you know what I mean? It's one of those movies where you watch it and you go, "Oh, this is kind of stupid, but it's all right."
I think,
Right. Go
Go
on,
on,
JB.
go on.
Go on.
No. I was going to say, the whole point of the first RoboCop is all of those challenges about how he was before, family man, gets shot, then loses has his memory wiped, everything comes back together, and he's struggling with his human conscious and mind being controlled by four directives, and you don't really seem to get. I don't think you get that in this the remade version at all.
No, I agree.
At all.
The remade one is much more for visual and a bit, yeah. Go on, Ben.
Before you bring us home, Nathan, with the last one you want to talk about, which sort of nicely sort of brings us in a full circle from what we started this podcast talking about, I want to mention one. I believe it is a director's cut. However, it was asked. It wasn't the director forcing it upon the studio. It was the studio said, "Hey, this was good. Why don't we give the fans a little bit more?" Have you seen Spider-Man 2.5?
I have a feeling I have, but I don't remember it.
So essentially, it's Sam Raimi's re-edit, director's cut, whatever you will, of Spider-Man 2. But he didn't do it because everyone was unhappy with Spider-Man 2, because Spider-Man 2 is probably one of the best superhero films there has ever been. I'm not sure how well it's dated. I haven't seen it all the way through in a very, very long time.
But at the time, it was well considered.
At the time, oh my God, it was just like, Jesus Christ, this is what a superhero film should be. That and X2, oh my God. So anyway, I think that the studio Sony was so happy with how well the movie did for a special edition of the DVD, because it wasn't a Blu-ray at that point, it was still a DVD, I believe. I might be wrong here, but they said, hey, let's give the fans a little bit more of the movie, a little bit like I guess Peter Jackson did with the Lord of the Rings films, with the extended editions of those. It was bits that were cut from the film for pacing, for plot, for the rating, that were like, okay, we'll trim that a little bit and we'll definitely get a 12 or a 12A, yada, yada, yada. So, for example, there's a few more scenes of horror when Doc Ock comes to life on the operating table for the first time.
Right. Yeah.
The fight on the train is extended. There's some scenes where Mary Jane is talking to a friend, which is cut because it's pacing stuff. However, it's all right. It's pretty good. And the fight on the train that was already incredibly well done is even better because it's longer and it's more brutal. So it was
there's a bit on the road or something. There's a bit extra where he's.
Yes.
I remember that now. Yeah.
Guys before he goes to the theatre. Yeah. There's a couple of scenes here and there, and it's a good fun time. However, it's not better. I think a lot of directors' cuts aim to be better than the theatrical cut. They aim to be better what came first. I don't think, save for some extra fight scenes on the train, I don't think it makes Spider-Man 2 a better film. I think it's interesting. Some of the stuff that you see is okay, but it's not really needed. I think the Lord of the Rings special editions make what you've already got, which is already incredible, even better. The couple of scenes that were edited out of Robocop to make it an 18, not make it an X-rated film, give the film that more of a jolt to the system. You know, this Spider-Man 2.5 or special cut, whatever you want to call it, it's all right. It's fine. It doesn't hurt the film. It doesn't make the film any better. The theatrical cut of Spider-Man 2 is probably the better version. But this is it throws in some nice stuff to have, and it doesn't ruin the film at all. So I just wanted to mention that because that's an interesting one. There are other things as well because I've seen that one, but I haven't seen, for example, X-Men Days of Future Past. There's a completely different version of that film called the Rogue Cut, where Rogue is doing the bit that Kitty Pryde is doing throughout the film, or takes Kitty Pryde's hours to do it, or something like that.
Rogue is just in the Rogue cut. She's not in. She's not in the other cut at all. She was in the promotional like posters and stuff, and she was. I remember there was a Total Film or an Empire. I can't remember which one, but it had like different covers, and one of them was of Rogue. And then the movie came out, and she literally wasn't in it. I mean, it's not even like she was in it in the background. Like they cut her out.
No, she's completely gone. Yes.
Yeah.
Completely gone. So yeah, there you go. Director's cuts. They're a mixed bag.
There's one final one to talk about briefly, and it's sort of linked back to Justice League and the Superman element. But there's Superman 2, and Superman 2 is, I mean,
Richard
it's
Donner cut, right?
Yeah, it's infamous in this way, and I think it is essentially exactly the same as Zack Snyder's Justice League. It just happened to be there was no internet, because Richard Donner made Superman, always planning to make Superman 2. They filmed scenes that were to be used in Superman 2. And he filmed about, I think it was about 3/4 of the movie, maybe even more. And then he was fired because I think he had studio interference and he didn't get on with I can't remember the name.
Salkins. The
Salkins, thank you.
Yeah, fell out with the Salkins massively.
So they hired Richard Lester, and the only way that he could get a directing credit on it was if he'd filmed more than 50% of the movie. So they literally went back and did loads and loads of reshoots. And having seen both, the Donner cut is far superior. It makes so much more sense. I will say he does use the traveling back in time, spinning the world backwards again, which is a little bit annoying that it's a reused idea. But then I suppose if you filmed them back to back, and they were intended to be seen as a 1 and a 2, then it fits.
Yes.
But yeah, it's really interesting that character is almost doomed by these interferences. Have you seen either cut?
I don't think I have.
I haven't seen it. I'm aware that it exists, and I would dearly like to watch it, but I've never just got around to it. I possibly should have watched it as research for this podcast, actually, because I knew it would come up. But I'm aware that the tone of Superman 2 was vastly different with Richard Donner to what it ended up as with Richard Lester. Because Richard Lester, correct me if I'm wrong here, Nathan, but I think didn't he direct the Three Musketeers and the Four Musketeers movie, and he was sort of known as more of a comedic director.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
So what we actually got with his version of Superman 2 was a little bit more comedic, whereas with it not being a comedy, because it wasn't a comedy, but there are some things with Lex going, I ain't never had a parachutes and stuff like that Gene Hackman would not come back to reshoot because he shot Superman 2 for Richard Donner and he wouldn't come back for Richard Lester.
Yeah, and there's like weird shots where it's like not Gene Hackman. And
obviously not Gene Hackman.
Yeah. And I think there's some controversy about Marlon Brando as well. I don't know if his likeness was to be used, and so when they did the Donner cut, because they did it 25 years later or whenever it was,
and the rest
I think they were able to CGI his face, Marlon Brando's face, and get him to sort of say more pertinent lines that fit more with the way it works. So like they made like because it was already in a crystal chamber, and because it was a ghost-like face, it didn't have to be particularly perfect, and so they just kind of like mapped it and then got it to move the lips at the right speed, and you kind of look at it and go, oh, that's not quite right, but then it's Jor-El inside a crystal chamber with a ghost face, so you kind of don't mind. But there's some interesting stuff in there, and the tone is really different, and it just fits better as a movie, compared to the first movie. But I just think it's really interesting that this character has got this almost curse, and they ended up using, actually, in order to fill in the gaps, they used Christopher Reeve's test footage and his what do you call that? Sorry.
Oh, what, like rehearsals and things like that, maybe, or
no.
Screen test?
Screen test. When you come in for a test.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What do you call that? There's a proper word for that.
Audition.
They used Christopher Reeve's audition footage. What is wrong with my brain?
You turned it to James JB.
Yeah. But they had to use, so the scene where at Niagara Falls at the beginning, he later on tells Lois that he is Superman, and that footage is from his audition.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Does it have the same? Okay. Does it have the same bit in that scene where he goes from sort of being hunched over to sort of straightened up, almost like a foot taller? I'm actually Superman.
Yeah.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Okay. So there you go. There's director's cuts.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we all know they are a thing. I'm not entirely sure I'm incredibly happy with the precedents that Zack Snyder's Justice League is going to set. We've already heard an awful lot of movies like Suicide Squad. Is that going to have a director's cut now? And yada, 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 and so on and so on. I don't know. I hope this doesn't become the norm going forward. I hope this is just a really, really unprecedented situation. And because we're in a global pandemic, this is giving us some good news. This is giving us some good news that people have been crying out for.
I love it. I love them. I think it makes cinema more interesting. I think it gives you a different perspective. It gives you a chance to re-love what you've already enjoyed, or it gives you a chance to try to love something that you hated. We didn't talk about Daredevil. We should talk about that. And that was that movie actually extra half an hour, and apparently their Daredevil director's cut is very good, even though the Daredevil is considered to be trash. So
does it make it a better film though, Nathan?
I don't know.
Does it really?
I'm just saying that I love it. I love the idea of director's cut, extended cut, special edition. I love all that sort of stuff. It's good
if
fun.
It's done for the right reasons, then fine.
Yeah, but the original still exists always. The original always still exists. Like when Ghostbusters 2016 came out, whatever it was, and everyone was like, it's ruined everything about Ghostbusters. It's like, oh, shut up. You can still go and see the original Ghostbusters. That still exists. It's fine. It hasn't ruined anything.
It tarnishes your view on it, doesn't it? I mean, it's a bit. So I think Snyder's obviously got form on this in terms of he BVS. Then he released the Ultimate Cut, which was like, oh my god, this was so much better. So that's why everyone's thinking, okay, he's had to leave. Someone's taken over. Snyder's going to make this all right for everyone. I'm a little bit nervous about it. I'm excited, but I'm nervous.
I'm going to watch it. I'm definitely going to watch it. 100% going to watch it. I want to see it.
We're watching it for this.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
I would say you're right, James. Snyder's also got precedence from it as well from Watchmen. So he's got a theatrical cut of that, a director's cut of that, and an ultimate cut of that, where there were extra scenes in the director's cut, and then in the ultimate cut you had the animated scenes of the comic book within the comic book. So he has done this quite a lot. So yeah, interesting. Yeah, we're gonna have to watch it because of this. We have to have an opinion. We're not allowed to not have an opinion.
No, of course we're not.
I think my final thing to say about director's cuts is that what I really would like is for studios to back the directors they hire and back the scripts that they approve and they green light to actually become a film. That's what I want to happen. I don't want to have to watch a director's cut of a film or the ultimate cut of a film to see what I should have seen in the first bloody place. That's my problem.
What if they're shit? Think about like Solo. Apparently, Solo is basically a director's cut, or a changed movie, because the Phil Lord and Chris Miller directed about half of it, were terrible apparently, got fired. Ron Howard came on and made a really good, serviceable movie.
Well, there you go. Yeah, absolutely. There you go. There you go.
Ben, where can people find us to tell us what they think about their extended cuts, director's cuts, special editions, etc.?
They can find us on social media. They can find us on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Just search for Nerds Chatting, all one word. This podcast is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and Podbean. It's nerdschatting.podbean.com, or just search for Nerds Chatting again. You will find us. If you want to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. We love a review, and it will help other people. Yes, we do, JB. It will help other people find this podcast. And if you really want, if you interact with us on social media, you'll be talking to me. If you send us an email by sending an email to nerdschatting@outlook.com, you will get ignored by Nathan, unless he forwards it to me, in which case I'll reply and get Nathan to send you the reply if he can be bothered.
Occasionally there'll be an email, and what I'll do is forward to Ben and say, "What the hell is this, Ben?"
Yes. Yes. And of course, I'm going to throw in a little extra bit. You can also follow our personal accounts if you want to, which is James Bingham _78. That's it, right? Isn't it, James? Something like that?
Probably. I don't
Nate
know.
_nerdchat, Ben _nerdchat. Nate, why don't you? JB, why don't you change your Twitter handle to match mine and Nathan's?
Because I don't
You
know
don't know how to, do you? You don't know how to do it.
No.
And therefore, you should leave it as it is. That's how it should stay.
I didn't even know what. I don't know what a Twitter handle is. Is it like a bike handle or
Yeah, it's like a door
cup
handle.
handle?
It's more like a door handle where you get into
door
a
handle.
door. Yeah.
Brilliant, thanks.
Yeah.
Cool.
Don't let it slam you on the ass as you walk out. Right.
I don't have a Twitter door.
I love the idea of a Twitter door, though. Now that's a great little metaphorical concept. So we're not back next week, but we're back the week after that, and we'll probably be doing a nerd scene and broken news special, I should think, because probably a lot of stuff to talk about. So we will speak to you again in 2 weeks' time. Thanks very much, everybody.
See you later. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye bye.
Ooh, Ben's reading I Am Legend.